Good morning. We're learning as a chutz for Shleim of Ilan Chaya Basarach and for Meir Ben Zero Peril. We're on Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top by the 2 dots. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Rav, Ra Echad Sheshachad. If you saw someone shechting, Imro Meitchila Ve'ad Saif. If you watched him from the beginning to the end, you watched how he did it, and he did it correctly. Mutar Lecha Mishutasei. You can eat from what he ate. V'im Lav Asa Lecha Mishutasei. But if you didn't see him from the beginning to the end, it's also to eat from the shechita. Like the Hey Chidam, what's this case? Idiyada de Gomer, if you know that he knows what he's doing, he's a person who's knowledgeable about the laws of shechita, and therefore, like we had said before, we don't have to be worried that he's not aware that you can't stop in the middle, you can't pause, or that you're not allowed to use the knife in a pressing motion. It has to be a back and forth motion. So if you know that he did that, lam lira, then why do you have to be watching him? You can trust that he did it properly, right? We don't watch everyone who chefs. We trust them that as long as we know that they're a competent chef, we can trust them. But if you know that he's not competent, then pshita, it's pashut that he can't be trusted. How do you know? Then if you didn't watch him, obviously you can't trust the shechita. He doesn't even know that you're not supposed to be shy and that you're not supposed to be dirus. Ve'ela the la yada igama v'loigam. We're talking about a case where we don't know. He's stam a Jew. You see him; he's wearing a yarmulke and tzitzis, but you don't know if he's a Amaretz who doesn't know the halachos of shechita, or if he's someone like us hadn't yet gotten to catch him. He didn't get to Daf Yomi to learn that you can't do Shi and you can't do Drisa. So Lema, if that's the case, Roiv Mitzuyin Eitzel Shechita Mumchen Hein. But the Gemara says, if that's the case, l'chayra, we should fall back on our rule that anyone, right people are mumcha legabe shechita. It doesn't mean that any person, but any person who actually shechts an animal. How many animals have you shechted in your life? Yeah. Zilch. I think everyone, all of us, haven't shechted an animal. That's my assumption. So when you find someone who's shechting an animal, it's probably because he looked into it. He knows the halachas of shechita. Most people who do shechita a mumche. Milay Tanya. I'll bring you a raya from a brisa. Have you found a chicken that was shechted in the shuk? Or he told his shliach, go out and shecht this animal. And then he went. The person who sent him went, and he found that the animal was shechted. We can assume that it was shachar. We'll get to the second part. What the issue with that is. That's a question. We'll see. Maybe shlichus, maybe something else. But we're talking about the first one. You find a shechted tanagas. I mean, someone obviously cut it. Shechted shchita doesn't mean necessarily a kosher shchita, but you saw that its head was cut off. It was sliced, so you know that it's a slaughtered bird. You can assume that it was slaughtered properly. So if that's the case, again, what is the case? If we're talking about, we said it could be, if we know that the guy knows how to shech, then it should be kosher. We know that he doesn't know how to shech, it should not be kosher. It should not be a shechita. And if we don't know, we should say, so again, what is this memra of Rav Nachman Amarav? That if you see him from the beginning to end, it's mutter, and if not, it's us. We're talking about someone, we know that he doesn't know how to shech. We're going to shachat kaman chad siman shapik. But we saw him shech one siman properly. But then you didn't see the rest of the shechita. Not meaning, we said mitchila vatzayif, it's kosher. Not mitchila vatzayif means if you only saw mitchila. You saw part of it, but the other part you didn't see. The high shaper, half nami shaper. So I would say, even though this person does not know how to shech, but maybe since we actually saw him shech one siman properly, we can assume he continued on and did the second part properly as well. Kamashmal and Hayisrami lay either Shema Shah Shema Daras. He said that's not a raya. Even though he happened to get it right on the first siman, that's no indication about what happened with the second siman. And since you didn't see it, and you know this person is not knowledgeable, we can't assume that he did the second one the same one he did the first one. The first one, it just happened to be he got it right. And the second one, maybe stopped the middle and maybe pushed instead of slicing.
There's no one motion.
Yeah, it's very. You find the Gemara often will say one simon. Okay, how do you even cut one simon? It's a. I guess it could be more than one simon, right? You could do back, back. You do one forward. You do. Let's say go one simon like this and the other simon like that. When you do shechita, it's two ways, right? It's back and forth. So maybe he did one simon on the way out, on the way this way, then he turned around, then he did the other simon on the way back.
I thought it's supposed to be like very quick motion.
The Gemara, we'll see soon, says that it's supposed to be a back and forth. It's not just one way. It's two motions.
It's supposed to be two motion.
As the Gemara says. I thought like you also that they just go like that. I know by chickens they only do one simon though. So maybe by chickens they do one motion. By a cow, to be honest, I don't know exactly. I don't know halacha l'maisa how you shech the cow. Lizzie, you have any idea?
I think the fact that we don't know and we're like stumbling around here, it's the same thing as if one of us shechted, right? Even if we got lucky and shechted one simon correctly, odds are the second one we managed to botch up.
Yeah. Listen, I personally would not watch a shechita because I feel like I would be fainting on the ground. I don't do well with
vegetarian.
The kain doesn't have to do the shechita. I can deal very well with the cow after it's dead. I'm happy to eat it, but like I don't like blood.
You're the one who lose your appetite.
I don't even like. I barely like it cooked. I like it very raw. No, the zar can do the shechita. Shechita is sheir bizarre. That's the one thing that we don't have to do. Yeah, and so in any case, I don't really know I can't say for sure. Wait, we'll ask Rabbi Twersky before he put down. Bo minei Rav Dimi bar Yosef Rav Nachman. Dimi bar Yosef asked Rav Nachman, "Ha'emel shluchot seyu shchait." This case that we had just mentioned. He said to his shliach, Reuben said to Shimon, "Go and shech me." V'halach. Then Reuben went. Umatza shachat. He found that the animal that he had told Shimon to shecht as a shliach, he finds it that it was shecht. We didn't see Shimon shechting it, but he finds it that it was already slaughtered. Mao. What's the din? Can he trust that Shimon, who knew how to shecht, he was a person who was competent, can you say that he shechted it, or do you assume someone else shechted it who didn't necessarily know what to do? Amalei chaskasei shachar. Says the chazak is that it was shechted properly. Ha'emel shluchot seyu shraim. If he told his shliach, Reuben told Shimon, go and take truma from my pile of wheat. And then Reuben went to where the pile of wheat is, and he found it was neatly piled next to it the trumas and maisus, that it was separated. That is not a good truma. We can't assume it was done properly. But well, why is the obvious question? Why is truma different than shchita? Shchita, you're saying. Why did we say that the first shliachas when he told him to shech that it's good because we assume the shliach did his shliachas afilu trumanami, and on the truma also let's assume that the shliach did his shliachas. And the shchita shouldn't be kosher also. Amalei, so he answered back to him, when you'll prepare for me a chunk of salt, meaning I need you gotta do me a little bit of a taiva, and then I'll give you the answer. See what he gave a token. I want you to do a token service for me in return for getting an answer. He says, really, we don't assume, both in the case of shchita and the case of truma, that the person you sent to do the shlichus did it. Or shchita inami, what was that again? Inami inish, you take out the word dilma. Inami inish achrina shama v'yazal shachet, even if the shliach didn't do the shchita. But like we said before, if you find something that was slaughtered, you can assume a butcher is the one who did it, or a sheikhet is the one who did it. And most people who are sheikhet know what they're doing. So you could assume if you find something shechted that it was done properly. So even if the shliach didn't do it, someone else did it, you could still trust that it was slaughtered properly. Truma, but on Truma, Dilma Inish Achrin Shama V'Yazal Karam, maybe another person heard and he went ahead and did took the Truma, Haletam Shalai Midas. That means that the person who took the Truma off was not a Shliach. Haletam Shalai Midas ain't Truma, say Truma. That is not a valid Truma. It's not a question of expertise when it comes to Truma. You have to have been sent by the owner. A person cannot voluntarily, just decide I'm going to take. If Reuben tells Shimon, go take off, separate my truma, and Levi says, I heard it, hears it, and goes ahead and takes off the truma. That's not a valid truma because he wasn't sent by the owner. You cannot take off truma without a person's instructions. So we have just said we brought a couple of gemaras that were based on the concept that roiv mitzuyan etzel shchita mumchen, which, like we said before, doesn't mean that most people are mumchen, but it means most people who will actually do a shchita are mumchen. If you find someone who's shechted, chances are he knows what he's doing. Lema roiv mitzuyan etzel shchita mumchen hein tanoi. Let's say this concept is machlekes tanoim of whether we assume someone who does shchitas probably knows the halachas. The Tanya. Haresha Abdullah Geduya V'Tana Goyla. Someone who lost his kid goat or his chicken. He found his Billy the kid. He found him shechted on the side of the road. Yehuda Eiser. Yehuda says it's also. We don't know if the shechita was done properly. Maybe it's not a kosher. Maybe it was not kosher. Chanina ben Eiser of Yosei Aglili mat. Rav Chanina, the son of Yosei Aglili, says it's mut. So l'chayra. Which is a machlekes of whether roiv mitzuyan etzel shchita mumchenin. Rav Chanina holds that we do say roiv mitzuyan and therefore it's mutter, and Rav Yehuda holds it's also. We have a third sheet here which is going to need to be explained. It's a little hard to understand. Rabbi says that l'chayra Rav Yehuda is correct, that if you find it on the dump, that it's going to be also. Because even if a person is a mumcha, whatever the case, we'll leave that on the side. The theory is if you find it in the garbage, probably it's an avela, and that's why it was thrown in the garbage. So we have an indication that it's no good. With Divri of Chanina, we said Rabbi Chanina, who says it's mutter, shematzah mabayis, it was found in the house. Well, you don't have any indication that it's an avela. But in any case, we'll leave Rebbe on the side, but we'll go back to Rav Chanina and Yehuda. Ma'ila b'hokamet. Is this not the machlokes between Rav Yehuda and Rav Chanina? The Marsav Arin Roiv Mitzuyan Etzel Shchita Mumchen. Rav Chanina, who said that it's mutter, holds Roiv Mitzuyan Etzel Shchita Mumchen, and therefore it's mutter. Marsav Arlei Amin Roiv Mitzuyan Etzel Shchita Mumchen. Rav Nach, so it's a machlokes Tanaim. Rav Nach Yitzchak Loi. No, the Kuli Alma Roiv Mitzuyan Etzel Shchita Mumchen. Really, you could say that even Rabbi Yehuda says it's aser, would agree that generally the rule is that roiv mitzuyan etzel shchita mumchen. Of a bias, which is like what we said in the Gemara before, right? We've been going that roiv mitzuyan etzel shchita mumchen, and it wouldn't be good. We can deal with if there's a brisa, if we understand the Mishnah that everyone agrees roiv mitzuyan. It wouldn't be that good if we had that everyone agrees. Not Matzeh Esam Shlut, and then we'd have to go back and explain the Amarayim before. But so if that's the case, why is Rabbi Yehuda saying it's also if he holds more Mitzvah Eitzel Shlut than Eitzel Shchita Mukhin? Or b'Baiskul Yamalei Pligid Shari. Even Rabbi Yehuda would be masking that if you find it in the house under normal circumstances that it's mutter because Roiv Mitzvah Eitzel Shchita Mukhin. Ba'ashka Shabashok Tukul Yamalei Pligid Asa. And even Rav Chanina would agree, if you find it a public dump, so then you would assume that it wasn't shechted properly, it was thrown away. because you found it in the garbage. If you shechted something that's valuable, a nice lamb that you can make shawarma out of, or a nice goat, why would you throw it in the garbage? Ki pligi ba'ashba shebabayis. You found it in your house's garbage, the dump behind the house. Marsava adam also lahatan of lase ba'ashba shebabayis. Yehuda said it's also because if it became an avela, he would throw it in his garbage. But Rav Chanina says it's gonna if you throw away your nevela in your back of your house, it's gonna start smelling. It's gonna rot and be disgusting. So it must be that it got there somehow. It was unintentionally put there. Even if it was an avela, you wouldn't put it there. It was put there unintentionally, so it's not any different than if you found it in the house. Because if it was an avela, you would have thrown it out. If you know you can't eat it, it must be, if you left it around the house, it must be because you thought you could eat it. And it somehow ended up, it was dragged there by an animal, by a cat took it out there. But it's not, doesn't indicate that it wasn't shechted properly. So that is the way you could understand the machlekes or Chanina of Yehuda, that it's no indication that there's a Manda Amar who holds, we don't say Roy Mitzvah Eitz Shchita. I'm a Rebbe. Then we had Rebbe's shita. He said, "Neron divrei Rabbi Yehuda shemotzah ba'ashka." He said that we hold like Rabbi Yehuda that it's also when you found it in the garbage. My ashpa. What ashpa are we talking about? Ilay ma'ashpa shebeshok. So the way we had just understood this machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and Chanina, we said it's Rabbi said we hold like Rabbi Yehuda when it was found in the garbage. So which garbage are we talking about? If you're talking about the garbage in the public garbage, then even Rav Chanina would agree that it's us. So what do you say? Nirein divrei Rav Yehuda b'matam ba'ashpa. That's not. There's no disagreement about that. Rav Chanina also holds it's us. El lab shita ba'asher b'bayis. Elamai, we're talking about the asher b'bayis. He's saying we hold like Rav Yehuda that it's also the asher b'bayis. He's agreeing with Rav Yehuda. So we found it house. My bias. If it's talking about the bias, we said that again we have the opposite problem that we indicated that even Rabbi Yehuda would agree that if you find it in the house, it's mutter. We said the only machlekes was in the ashbashem bias. So why would Rabbi say, I agree with Reb Chanina, bias, but Rabbi Yehuda also agrees with that. There's no machlekes. Ela pshita ba'asher b'bayis. Ela mayim talking about the ashbashem b'bayis. That's where he's saying that he holds like Rav Chanina that it's mutter. But we had interpreted that when it said ba'ashba, it meant ba'ashba b'bayis that he holds like Rabbi Yehuda. And now we're saying when it says b'bayis, those are Rav Chanina. That means also the ashba b'bayis was saying that it's mutter. So he's kasha the Rebbe at the Rebbe. It turns out Rebbe is passing like both sides of the machlekes. He's passing both like Rabbi Yehuda and like Rav Chanina on the question of ashba b'bayis. It's like Marahachi come up. Nirayin divrei Rabbi Yehuda Rav Chanina b'nai Rabbi Yisrael ba'ashva shebeshok. He's not saying at all like the way it reads. He's saying I paskin like Rabbi Yehuda by ashpa and like Rav Chanina b'bayis. He's saying Niran divrei Rabbi Yehuda Rav Chanina b'nai Rabbi Yisrael ba'ashva shebeshok. He's saying Rabbi Chanina b'nai Rabbi Yisrael Haglili agrees with Rabbi Yehuda by ashpa shebeshok. He only said his shita by ashva shebabayis. So Rebbe, instead of coming arbitrating or coming to a decision about the machlekes between Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Chanina, is really coming to describe what the machlekes is, and he's describing it the way Rav Nachman had described it. That they're not arguing by ashva shebashuk, and they're not arguing by bias. What he's coming to say is that even Rav Chanina would agree by Ashba Shebeshok that the halacha is treated like it's going to be awesome. And Rav Chanina would only say his din by Ashba Shebbayis. Al Ashba Shebeshok Moidele. They take out this last word v'niroin. So that's what the memra of the Mishnah The member of Rebbe is to define the machlokes, and he's saying he's saying Rav Chanina said his din only by Ashur Bayis, not by Ashur Shebesh. Our Mishnah, so finally back we're on Daf Yud Beis Beis, we're finally getting back to our original Mishnah. Remember, there were 4 things we had said in the Mishnah. The last statement of the Mishnah was Chutz michayu sheit v'katan shema yikalkalu eshchitas. Actually, it's not the last thing. That's the 3rd thing. We say chayu sheit v'katan that's shechted. Their shechita is no good because they will they're likely to mess it up. They're not going to. They'll be sure. They'll wait. They'll pause in the middle. Or they'll do drisa. They'll push instead of slicing. The lashon of the Mishnah is not so good. Shema kilkalu like tani. It doesn't say a chayu sheit v'katan shechita is possible because maybe they did it incorrectly. Ela shema yikalkalu. It said maybe they will do it incorrectly. But we're saying we thought the Pasha of the Mishnah is saying if chayu sheit v'katan did it, it's possible because maybe they did it incorrectly. But the lashon it uses is maybe they will do it in the future incorrectly. That's coming to tell you. Even though we say if a gadol is oimed al gaba when a katan does it, it's going to be kosher. You shouldn't do that. It means l'chatchila, it's best not to do it with a katan with a gadol watching it, because even though the gadol will watch and try to see, make sure he doesn't pause in the middle, and make sure he doesn't do a pushing motion. Either the gadol might not notice, there might be a momentary pause that the katan does, and it's hard for him to see. Or the katan, maybe the katan will do it a different time without him watching. So we don't want to encourage it. So therefore, Rashi says, we don't want to do it even with someone watching. Even if you're talking about Chullin, even if you're not talking about Kach. The last thing of the Mishnah, we said, but if the chayu sheit of a katan shechted and others are watching, the shechita is ksher. Mantana, the loy beinin kavana l'shechita. Who is the man the Amar who says that you don't need kavana when you do a shechita? Who is the man the Amar who says that you could shecht even without intending to do a shechita, just to cut something? A katan, as we know, we're going to get more into the status of what goes on in a katan's head. But a katan, generally, we know, doesn't have das. So his intention to do a shechita is not an intention. He's just intending to do an action. So who's the mandam who says it's not necessary to intend to shech for the shechita to be kosher? Amar Rav Nosson. This is Rav Nosson. The Tana Oishia Zira, the Min Chavrei. Oishia, who was the youngest of his chaverim, Zarak sakin lenoyetza b'kaisel. If someone threw a knife, and his intention was he wants it to stick in the wall, like the axe throwing things. He was just throwing the knife for fun. And as it was going, it shechted an animal. That wasn't his intention. His intention was to see it stick in the wall and quiver there. But as it was going, there happened to be an animal, and it hit perfectly. It sliced through the simonim, and it shechted the animal. Rav Nosson Machshir. Rav Nosson says it's kosher. He holds, in spite of the fact there was no intention to shecht, it's still a good shechit. Chacham poislin. Chacham say it's puzzle. There was no kavana. Who tani love? Who amala halacha Rav Nosson. He said this, and he said taka halacha is like Rav Nosson, who says that you don't need kavana. Correct the Gemara, but how does that work? How does this case where he threw a knife and shechted an animal, maybe, like we said before, you need back and forth. So when you only throw it, it's only one way. It's like Gemara, no. He wasn't, I don't know if any of you ever went to the axe throwing. I've done it, and it never sticks, right? No. You never went. So when you throw the axe, they have these things, and you throw the axe, and it bounces back, and it seems incredibly dangerous, like it bounces right past your nose. The axe. That was my experience. Shaholchu b'kadarka. Talking about where it sliced the animal's throat on the way toward the wall, it hit the wall, and it bounced back and it sliced it again. So it's Moilech Umevi with that one throw. So that's how you have Yotzit. So it seems like you do have to do back and forth. I don't know if that's the Psak Halacha. I have to look it up. Amr Chia Baraba, Boy Rabbi Yochanan. I don't think we're going to be able to finish this, but we'll get started. Rabbi Yochanan asked the following question. Now we're talking about, let's see, the Rashi, he defines what we're talking about. We're not talking now about shechting to eat. We're talking about the shechita of a carbon. To be eating kavanah, like we learned at the beginning of Zvachim, right? You need to do it, you have to have an intention to shecht for kachim. What happens if a cotton is shechted? Is that, and he intended it to be oila, but his machshava, which Rashi throughout Kachim always says, when you have a machshava, we said legabe pigel also. Rashi always says a machshava means that you say, this is what I want to do. So if the cotton says, I am intending to shech this for oila, do we respect what he said, and is that considered a sufficient kavana or not? Rami said, why are we asking about kavana? Let's ask about maisa. As we're going to see, there's a Mishnah, which we're going to quote in a few seconds, that says both the case of machshava, where he said, this is what I intend to do, and it also said the case of maisa. What is the maisa? Zakrashi, the tiboyle maisa, Iloy shmeil elahach masisin lekamana Oliver Riman the tnamba the yeshla in maisa tiboy nami afilu yesh machshava in maisa hamechiachala shechenu going the kaima oila bedar. We're going to explain what the case of maisa is. That's the case where the oila is standing in the south. V'amar hareini mevia litzafan l'shachta la'oila, and the cotton says, I'm moving it from the south to the north to bring it to shechted as an oila. She'enik sheila, she'enik sheira b'darim, because it's not kosher in darim. The boilanami mashvile lahai maisa kavan oilai. Does the fact that he did not just a machshava, that he said out what he's doing, but he also did a maisa as well. He said, I'm moving it from the south to the north, and he did a maisa that indicates that what he was doing. Is that going to be a machshava? Is that going to be a kavana that will validate this shrit? So Dr. Gemara, Amle Ravami to boile maisa, maishna maisa like me boile. Why didn't he ask about maisa? Because he said the reason why he didn't ask about a maisa is because it's a mishnah that's non yesh lahen maisa. Because the mishnah says that when a cotton does a shchita with where he says what he's doing, and he does the maisa as well, the Mishnah says that that's a good machshava, that's a good shchita. Machshava nami lo tibayle, but machshava is also mentioned in that Mishnah that it's not a good shchita. It's not. Ein lahem machshava. The Mishnah says it's not a machshava. It's not. Where's this Mishnah? Ha'olain v'arimin v'a'igas. If someone has a olain, I don't remember what that is. Priyush akaren glance, she says. Harimin or pomegranate v'a'igas or not. Shechakum tinoikis limud bahen offer. A child, a little girl, scooped it out. She carved it out to make it into a little measuring cup to play with, to do her cooking set. So he made it for cooking. Oishat tinoikim lakaf maznayim, oshaskinim lakaf maznayim, or the child scooped it out to make it like a little scale to play with. Tamein, the din is that is considered a kli, a child's action of making something into a kli makes it into a kli, even though because they did a maisa, they scooped it out. If you have something that was made into a kli, it also has to have a machshava that it should be used as a kli. So Gemara, so sheyesh lahen maisa, since they did a maisa accompanying with what they're doing, that is that's going to be make it into that will be respected. That's going to be a kavana, and it's going to make it into a kli. So, and that will be the same thing over here the when the cotton took the behema from the south to the north. They did a maisa together with their saying that they're doing it for shechita. So that would also be a good shechita. But ein lehem machshava, and the Mishnah concludes that there's no machshava, meaning where Rashi says kagoin matzah leklipa az kamoishehi b'chishav alei limud efilim madabel shalei asa b'maisa l'shem kli, where they just found it and they didn't say any. They didn't do any maisa. They just said, "I want this to be a kli." That's not going to be enough unless they did a maisa. They did an action. So l'chayra. So in any case, so the structure. What happened over here is Rabbi Rabba said Rabbi Yochanan asked whether cotton has machshava or not, and we said the Gemara said, "Why didn't you say about maisa?" Because this Mishnah says that a maisa is respected, the maisa of a cotton is respected, but the Mishnah also said that the machshava of a cotton is not respected. So why are you asking about machshava if it's indicated in the Mishnah? The reason you didn't say maisa is because it said in the Mishnah that it is respected, but machshava said in the Mishnah it's not respected. So why are you asking the question? I never intended to ask where cotton just said, I want this to be a shechita for l'shem oila. Hikami boile machshavta nikeres mitoich ma'isa. We're not talking about where he said I want it to be a shechita for an oila, and he also did a ma'isa, but rather he only did the ma'isa without saying anything, without having the machshava along with it. I know this is confusing because we're saying machshava and we're meaning to say something. But that happens to be Rashi Shita throughout Kachim. He always says like L'gabe Machshavas Pigel, it means that the person said that I want it to be for this. It's not enough for him just to think it. That's what when it says Machshavas Nikarach Matech Maisav, meaning it's only Nik Mitech Maisav, but not from him saying anything. So you don't have both factors, like we did in the case in the Mishnah where it said Maisa, we're talking about where he both the child both scooped out the nut as well as said that I want it to be clear. But in this case, where it was only indicated by his mice. We're going to have a kaima oila b'darim, where the oila was standing in the darim, vasuya b'tzaf, and then the cotton brought it to the north, v'shachta, and he shechted it there without saying anything. What do we say? Mida asya b'tzaf v'shachta ikavanla. Do we say, since he brought it to the north, why would he bring it to the north if not for the fact that he's intending to do it as a oila? If he's just slicing, there's no reason to bring it in the north. He might as well do it in the south. Oidama, or maybe you say, no, it was just crowded on the south side. He was just more comfortable doing it on the north. But again, it's nothing to do. He doesn't really have in mind to do it as a speaker. Even this, the Gemara says, even this case of a maisa that's indicating what his machshava is without an actual verbalizing the machshava. The Tanan. Someone who brings his paris onto the roof because of the bugs. He wants to get them out of the bugs. Now the rule is that you only machshir paris to be makabel tuma. We've had this a number of times throughout Shas. The Torah says kiyit and kiyutan, that you need both, that it should have water go on it. If a person puts water on the tefua, that makes it machshir lekabel tuma. If the water goes on its own, the person has to have put it there with the intention that the water should go on it in order for it to be machshir, the tefua to be makabel tuma. This person put it on the roof not because he wants the water to go on it, but he wants to keep it away from the bugs. Yaralei and Tal. But then the dew descended onto the paris. It's not going to be hukshel kabel tuma because it was not his intention. But if he intended, he put it up there not for the bugs, but because he wanted the dew to go on it and soften it up. Then it would be hukshel kabel tuma. Halam Cheir Shait V'Katan. If a Cheir Shait V'Katan put it on the gag, Ava Pishin is Kavlakach, even though their intention is that the water should go on it, Ein B'Chiyuta. It's not going to be Hochshul Kabel Tumim. Neishiesh Lahen Maisa V'Ein Lahen Machshava. Because even though they did a Maisa of putting it on the roof, but there's no Machshava. They didn't say that we want it to be Hochshul Kabel Tumim. That's only talking about where they didn't, when the cotton put it on, but he didn't turn it over after part of it got wet. He didn't turn it over to make sure the whole thing got wet. Right? There's no reason to turn it over if you're doing it for bugs. That's an indication you're doing it for the water. So l'chayra, Rabbi Yochanan is saying over here that l'chayra he's saying that the Maisa, even though the cotton did not say anything, the Maisa itself that indicates that he wanted the water to go on it is enough to be Hoksher l'kabel tumah. So that should indicate by us also that when the cotton takes the behema from the safan to the darm, even though he didn't say anything, that should be enough to indicate that he intends to do a shechita of kosher. To be honest, I did not get weiter in the Gemara. We could try it. Let's see quickly because it's the same thing.
I think Haki Kami Baile means is.
I'm sorry. Okay. I'm sorry. Haki Kami Baile. The Raisa the Rabbanan. The Gemara says no. It's not the question is not whether we respect the machshava of a cotton. The question is that the machshavta nikeres b'tek ma'asav is it could you be misaymech on it even lekula legabe shchita of a kosher that we're gonna say that it's going to be kosher, the shchita is going to be kosher, or we only respect it lechumra that we're going to say this thing is hoksher lekabel tumah and we'll treat it as if it was mekabel tumah. Question is, how far do we take it? Do we fully trust the Maisa Hanikeres of a cotton, or is it just a Chumra D'Rabbanan that we have to be chayshish with? Does he have, when he has a Maisa, does it work? Why do we ask him machshava? This is the opposite way. We had said he had asked about machshava. He's saying, let's Maisa. Maishna machshava, Doika Mibaili Tnan, Ela machshava, Maisa Namadibaili Tnan, Yeshal and Maisa. Anyway, the Raisa de Rabbanan, Pasha, Yeshal and Maisa, Vafilu Midaraisa. He comes to the conclusion, Yeshal and Maisa, there is a Maisa, Vafilu Midaraisa, that we're going to respect if there's an indication that he did the Maisa that shows what he did. We're going to respect even the Raisa, Lakula, Ela machshava, Vafilu Midarabanan. But even with the Rabbanon, we're not going to be chayshish. If he has a machshava, we're not going to say, if he had a machshava, let's say, legabe the nut, we're not going to say that we're going to be chayshish that it was makabel tumah the Rabbanon. Machshavta nikeres b'tek ma'asav the Raisa in ein loy the Rabbanon yesh loy. That's all talking about where he did actual ma'asav or with together with the statement, or he just had a machshava without any ma'asav. But the case of machshavta nikeres b'tek ma'asav, then we come to the conclusion the Raisa it will have to be chayshish for lekula midaraisa. We're not going to go lekula. The Rabbanan yesha where we will be chayshish midarabanan lechum. Okay, we'll stop over here.
Thank you. Have a great day.
My mom didn't even see this last thing, so I'm not started at 7:11. Yeah, have a good day. No.